Today we have with us Parichay Patra. Parichay Patra is a doctoral candidate at Monash University in the Department of Films and Screen Studies. He's working on Indian New Wave of 1970s. He's recently co-edited a couple of books called Salam Bollywood and Bollywood and Its Others. So Parichay, tell us, have there been any substantial changes in Indian cinema in recent times?
Of course, actually those of us who are working on Bollywood, and actually I am not working on Bollywood per se, I am working on Indian art house cinema from the 1970s. But when I reach the conclusion of my thesis, what I can see is Indian cinemas, and by Indian cinemas I mean various Indian cinema industries including Bollywood, have undergone quite a number of substantial changes. One of them being Bollywood does not necessarily exclude art cinema or middle cinema from its field anymore. It has become an all-encompassing term. Because earlier, before the economic liberalization in India, before the 1990s, we used to refer to it as Bombay-based Hindi film industry, but now we refer to it as Bollywood. Bollywood has this global connotation associated with its title. Moreover, by Bollywood we mean well, it connotes the sense of cinema effects, the way cinema can be disseminated outside the movie theatres, and how it can kind of encompass everything. I mean, the new fashion, lifestyle, changing consumption habits, changing architecture and the cityscape of Mumbai and other Indian cities. So, it is a part of the new Indian society and polity, and also a part of India's cultural diplomacy. Moreover, as you can see, apart from the quote unquote blockbusters that they are churning out in Bollywood, they are also making kind of quote unquote small town films, multiplex films to be consumed by the rising new middle class in India, and these films are kind of being shown in different international film festivals, not only for the consumption of the diaspora, the Indian diaspora, but also for the native audience there. For instance, films like Masan or Titli, or the kind of new generic films that are emerging there, like say Gangs of Wasseypur, all these noir films or gangster films that are being shown every year in Cannes and in other European festivals, being exhibited in Australia as well, in Melbourne International Film Festival. So Bollywood must have undergone substantial changes.
So do you think these changes have affected the reception of Indian cinema in Australia?
Of course. See, earlier when Indian cinema was being received in the West, it was categorized in kind of watertight compartments. So they used to have a different kind of reception model for the art cinema. Like see in Australia, for instance, in Queensland they have an art gallery called Coagoma in Brisbane actually. So they used to preserve Indian art house films. For instance, they have an excellent collection of all of Kumar Sahani's films, and they have restored his Khayal Gatha. Khayal Gatha was sponsored by Doordarshan, but now they have got it restored here. And they used to hold retrospectives of major Indian filmmakers like Satyajit Ray in Melbourne and Sydney International Film Festivals, and Indian films are competing in the competition sections there. And on the other hand, Indian popular has a different kind of reception model back then. But now, after the Bollywood Bollywood and economic liberalization, they go hand in hand. We can no longer divide it into watertight compartments, and now it's all mixed up. Bollywood does not necessarily exclude them from its field, and so all these multiplex films as well as Bollywood blockbusters get released in popular commercial chains here. So these two models used to exist simultaneously. Now they are all mixed up. Now, Melbourne International Film Festival showcased a number of Indian documentaries in 2014. So, and that was sponsored by Monash University. Earlier, Australian universities are not that interested in Indian cinema. And now we have all these popular chains releasing Indian cinemas throughout the year. Even the regional films, for instance, Telugu films, Bahubali, the regional blockbuster, that was released in the Village Cinema chain. And I closely follow Mahesh Babu's Facebook page. Most of his recent films like Srimantudu, I think, Srimantudu was released here in Melbourne. So that's a visible change in perception. There's a shift. And there's one Australian scholar called Adrian Atik. He did his PhD in the University of Wollongong, and he worked on the way Indian cinema is being received in Australia, especially in Sydney and the greater Illawarra regions in New South Wales. So, Australia is working as a kind of conglomerate of global media where Indian cinema is being received, and the reception model is changing from the kind of model that we used to encounter in the 70s or in the 80s.
Do you think contemporary India is successfully represented in Indian cinema in terms of society and polity?
I believe so, because see, earlier you used to have only blockbusters for the consumption of the diaspora audience. Now we have, as I have already mentioned, there are films like, kind of multiplex films to be consumed by the new middle class, like Masan and Titli and Gangs of Wasipur, and of course Vishal Bharadwaj films, Haider, or what he made before that, Maqbool and Omkara. So, of course, this new generic elements, they are making film noir, they are making gangster films, and they are making films on small towns. Masan is an important example, important instance, or films that kind of reflect a kind of low life setting in the metros, Titli for instance. So, yeah, these films are kind of representing the new India that is in the making, with its pros and cons, its flaws, and the visible shifts in its society and its politics.
Yeah. So do you think Bollywood sells in the West mainly because of the exotic appeal it has?
Well, Bollywood had, as I have already mentioned, earlier we used to refer to it as Hindi popular cinema based in Mumbai or Bombay. Now, at that point of time, it had a different type of reception model. It used to have kind of a huge audience in places like Eastern Europe, especially in the Soviet Union, erstwhile USSR, and also in Greece and in some other places in Europe, primarily because of India being a Soviet ally back then. And it was completely neglected in the academic field. But nowadays, because of academic research on Bollywood, that is producing lots of new materials, information and theorization on Bollywood. For instance, I have co-edited 2 books with Vikrant Kishore and Amit Sarwal. One has been published from Palgrave Macmillan back in 2014 called Bollywood and its Others Towards New Configurations. The other one is forthcoming from Routledge. It's called Salam Bollywood, Representations and Interpretations. So, what we have done is, we have tried to involve young Australian academics or early career researchers in this venture. Indian Australians as well as white Australians, if you allow me to use that word. So, scholars from University of Newcastle, Susan Kerrigan for instance, have contributed in our book. People from the UK, Sarah Joshi and others, they have contributed, as well as a host of young Indian scholars who are researching on Indian cinema in Australian universities have contributed in our books. So, these new academic research that are coming up, it has contributed significantly to change the way West used to view Bollywood or Indian cinema. Earlier it was being referred to only as kind of melodramatic musicals, song and dance, but now they have become much more responsive to the newer forms, that is the forms that are emerging in Mumbai right now.
So do you consider Bollywood as part of New World economics?
Of course, simply because see, India has recently become a part of this group called BRICS: Brazil, Russia, India, People's Republic of China, and Republic of South Africa. And current Indian government and Indian Prime Minister, they have just proposed a BRICS film festival so that it can become a place of cultural exchange, a site for cultural exchange. So, if India has to deploy its soft power, its cultural diplomacy effectively, it has to depend on Bollywood, because earlier there was a different kind of relationship between Mumbai industry and the government of India. Government of India kind of granted the industrial status to the industry long after, only in the late 90s, after economic liberalization. Before that, Government of India was more interested in producing an art house cinema. They invested a lot through Film Finance Corporation and National Film Development Corporation. But right now, Bollywood has become a part of Indian economy because it contributes hugely to Indian economy. Moreover, the enormous Indian diaspora that exists outside and contributes to the betterment of Indian economy and India's position in the West and in the United Nations, they kind of try to construct an identity away from home, a kind of different identity only through Bollywood. So Bollywood is working as soft power, as a part of cultural diplomacy, through the construction of identity of the diaspora, as well as a part of India's growing concern and India's growing presence in the world economic forums and in the global film festivals. That is a site of cultural exchange.
Thank you so much, Parichay, for your time and for coming to our show. We look forward to your books and to your work in world cinema. Thank you so much.
Thank you.